Hi everyone, we're coming to you live on Facebook. I'm Ashley, Education Developer for Blick Art Materials, and we're really excited to share with you this Acrylic Encaustic Effects painting demonstration. This is a great way to get that encaustic look and feel without all of the heat and tools. We're going to be using golden paint and mediums in a wide array of options to build layers on an ampersand cradled pre-primed gesso board. So this is a working surface that's completely ready right out of the packaging. And I'm going to show you some different painting techniques that we're going to combine, how to make acrylic skins, and a lot of other pro tips along the way that you can bring into your everyday painting process. Of course, we're doing a giveaway this evening, so don't forget, if you want to enter to win a $100 Blick e-gift card, make sure that you like this post, you like our Facebook page, and you follow us on Facebook. And we also have a giveaway question for you this evening, and that is, what's your favorite painting medium? I know my favorite painting medium is watercolors. Maybe yours is acrylics, or maybe you do dabble in encaustics or oil painting. Let us know in the chat and we'll get you entered to win that $100 Blick e-gift card. And when you get that gift card, head on over to our bundle page, or even before that, while we're doing our demonstration, check out that bundle page. There's a link in the description where you can find all the products that we're using here today. But there's a bonus on that bundle page. There are some printable design elements that you can use to help make this project even more doable, even if you're a beginner painter. So let's go ahead and get started. And if you have any questions for us along the way, we'll be responding in the chat directly. So any questions that you might have about the painting process, the products that we're using, or anything about your favorite painting medium, let us know. So let's go ahead and get started. So right here I have my 9x12 cradled pre-primed gesso board by Ampersand, and we're going to make an acrylic skin that we're going to work with that's going to be the same size of this board. Let me show you what I'm referring to when I say acrylic skin. You can make an acrylic skin out of almost any acrylic paint just by swiping it on a non-stick surface, waiting for it to dry, and then removing it later. So that's exactly what we're going to do here today. We're going to make a 9x12 clear acrylic skin, and I'm sure you'll be able to see this somewhat, even though it is clear. And it's basically just a sheet of plastic. That's what we're making today. And you'll know that it's completely dry because it is 100% clear and able to be seen through. So that's what's great about the clear tar gel that we're going to be using. So to make this process happen, I've taped down a piece of 12x16 palette paper, and that's just a non-stick surface that we can use to cast our acrylic skin on. And I've also pre-measured the board so that when I go ahead and do this pour and I spread everything out, I make sure that it's 9x12 and it's going to go right on top of my board. So this is a fun process because it is paint pouring. I have a gallon of the clear tar gel here that I'm going to use, and if I were you, I would go ahead and get the gallon because you might want to make 10 or 20 of these acrylic skins once you get started because they're extremely fun to paint on and they're extremely easy to make. So let's go ahead and get this open. And I would say if you have an apron, gloves, anything else that you would like to protect yourself with while you're working would be a great idea. So I'm just going to pour directly onto the center of this 12x16 palette paper. And there's not an exact science to how much clear tar gel you should use for one skin. But as a rule of thumb, the more you use, the thicker the skin will be. And I think about a cup, measuring cup's worth of clear tar gel is going to get you the thickness that you want. If it's too thin, then it might tear when you remove it from that palette paper. So make it as thick as you like. The thicker that is, the longer it will take to dry. And I'm using a catalyst wedge by Princeton to draw out this clear tar gel onto my surface. And the catalyst wedges are a series of rubber tools that are basically heat resistant, and they don't absorb any of this medium like a paintbrush would as it releases paint. So it's an ideal tool to have on hand for anyone in their studio, but particularly great for this process because I'm able to smooth this out as evenly and neatly as possible. I don't necessarily want to go all over the place. Now, the other great thing about clear tar gel, if you're sitting there wondering if you should pick some up, the other great thing about it is that it's self-leveling. So we're going to spread this out, and at the point that it's dry, which will be tomorrow, I've made some ahead of time for us, so don't worry, it will have dried completely flat. So right now I'm smoothing it out, and you might still see some bumps and unevenness, and that's fine because the longer it sits here, the more it's going to self-level, and that's going to be to our advantage. Now you might even notice some air bubbles when you're doing this process. That's no problem. Just pop them as you see them, and the self-leveling property of the tar gel will take care of the rest. And maybe there's some uneven edges. That's going to add a great texture to your painting. And I'll show you why when we take a closer look at the examples that we have here for you. All right, just throw this in a bucket of water that you have hanging out nearby, and it'll rinse right off, just like washing your dishes. All right, so now that we have this made, you can make 3, 4, 5, 6 at a time, as many as you can fit on your work surface at home. And then you're going to want to keep them on a flat surface overnight. So let's get this out of the way so that we can move on to our next step. Like I said, you'll know it's totally dry when it's no longer cloudy. I'm going to set this to the side here. Okay, so while that's getting set up, let's take a look at one of these on its own. Once it's dry, you have this plastic film, and that's exactly what we want. And we talked about earlier on the bundle page, when you go and visit, you're going to find some printable design elements. They may vary from what we have here, but are basically the same, and you can pick and choose and do kind of a collage technique with these different images. So this makes the process of painting these incredibly easy because you can see through them, and we're just going to place them below the surface, and we can paint a pattern using the elements. So think about if you want some kind of design or pattern to go along with your final piece. And then to give you an idea what we're working toward, I have a couple of examples here I'll share with you so that we know where we're going. I have a couple of these already made up. Now check this out. So you're going to get a lot of payoff out of this process. On one skin, we have 3 different treatments here using a combination of the design elements that we have as well as a fun splatter process that I just made up. So feel free to free your spirit in this process and really get that experience out of the golden paint that you really want. So we'll be making a pattern using the damask, and we'll use the ginkgo here and there, and then we'll finish it up with a splatter. And it'll be so much fun. But we're not going to stop there. We'll paint another skin using a reverse painting technique. And we have these beautiful orchids. You could paint 1 orchid or 3 or make a pattern with them. But we're going to paint both sides of this skin. So we'll have an outline that lives on the top, and then we're going to do a reverse painting technique on the back. And this is really interesting if you've never tried it before. It's going to give you this beautiful dimensional effect when it's all done. So let's keep going. I'm going to kind of go back and forth between my skins and the board that we're going to be working on. And actually, I think before we dive into this painting, let's paint our background. All right, so I want to make sure, let me get set up here. Going back to our 9x12 gesso board, our paint palette, and a variety of painting tools. All right, so here I have various palette knives, plastic, metal knives. We have some paintbrushes. It's important for this process. As a point of note, when you go to that bundle page, you're going to find a large brush and a detail brush, and it's going to be really helpful for you as you go to make this painting. And while I'm getting my paint palette set up, I do want to remind everyone that we are giving away a $100 Blick e-gift card. And the way that you can qualify for that gift card is to like this post, like our Facebook page, and follow us. And there's also a question that we'd like you to respond to in our chat. And that question is, what's your favorite painting medium? Now, careful of these bottles. Want to point this as a teaching moment. These high flow acrylics by Golden, which is one of the paints that we're going to be using, have a rattle on the inside of the bottle. So you want to make sure that you shake them up really, really well and you hear that rattle. But also be careful of any paint leaking along the way. So make sure that that lid is closed tightly, because you could go shake it and then that paint goes out everywhere. All right. So I'm using a combination of primary colors and secondary colors to make this happen. So I have magenta, white, and I have this beautiful green gold by Golden. Let's see, I think we're also going to want, so let's save those. I'm going to use a cool palette for my background. And that means I'm going to use colors like blues and purples, teal, etc., to give the painting an ambiance. Now, maybe you want a warm background. You know, maybe you want to do reds and golds and yellows. I think that part of the process is totally up to you. We're just going to show you an example of how to coordinate that color palette with the final piece to bring unity to the painting. All right, so now I've got some really great colors. Now here's an iridescent gold fine, gonna give us a little bit of shine. Okay, so let's do a mark making process to build up the texture in our painting, and this is really what we're going for here. Just a quick example. So we're going to use our palette knife and our brush, and we're going to make a really nice painting texture. All right, so I'm going to start with the color that I want to kind of carry through the whole piece and kind of let dominate the palette, and that's this beautiful teal color. Now I'm just going to paint without too much planning or thought and experience this what we like to call mark making process. And what's great about these colors is that they're analogous. So they're going to work together. I'm not going to bring in my red just yet because that's going to make my colors look muddy. Red, yellow, and blue together will give you brown. So that's the one thing that I try to look out for. But there's also these other painting tools that we can be trying, like palette knives. If you've never tried palette knife painting, I think you're really going to enjoy using it specifically for this process. Because, again, we're not specifically thinking about exactly what's going to happen after the mark making process. We're just making textures. So use your tools. Okay, and I'm going to I'm going to add in a little bit of this titanium white heavy body paint. So we were just using the high flow and the fluid acrylics before. So that's two kinds of paints that are intermixable by Golden. They're all acrylics. The difference is just how they go down, right? So is it stiff like the heavy body where it leaves a brush stroke or a palette knife stroke, or is it smooth like the fluid acrylic where there's much less texture but it still holds up really well? And then you have your high flow, which is so fluid to the point that it could be sprayed, say in a airbrush, for example. So lots of different options there. Let me go back to and I'm just having fun, and I hope that you do too. Let's bring in some of this purple, and we just want to cover the background. We're just getting it covered so that we don't see any of that white. And maybe there's some fun stuff like different kinds of marks you can make. Don't hold back. Let that intuitive painter come out and see what your brushes can do. This is a great way to learn about the tools that you have at hand and to let out some steam and make a nice ambient background. Now, I can keep going for as long as I like, but I like that little gold splash right there, and I think that that's gonna about do me. See, I say that and then I go back into it. Okay, I like it just as well. Now you can keep working or you can take it from there, but either way you'll have something very beautiful just by using those tools, working horizontally, vertically, in both directions, and getting that texture. Okay, so we're dealing with drying times in this painting. We have our skin that's drying. Now we have our background that's drying. So I think while this is drying, let's finally move on to those skins that we talked about at first. So setting that aside. Okay, we're going back to these clear skins, and I want to show you these little tricks that we can do with painting on these skins. All right, now I've already decided that I'm going to do a pattern with this damask, and I've just cut it away, so I don't need that whole sheet of paper. And I'm going to do a repeating pattern, so I'm going to have them going kind of something like that. Okay, now I am using, I want to make sure I've got my container of water nearby and a paper towel to swipe my brush on, and my painting palette. Okay, we're all good to go. All right, now the teal color I think is a great color for these skins to incorporate because it's a dominating color in our texture painting. And I don't want too much fluid in my brush, so I'm swiping it here. Okay, so I'm going to take this teal fluid acrylic paint and my detail brush, and this is just as easy as painting over this template and following along. Now, I do want to give you a brush painting technique to chew on. In the process called toll painting, you'll find a very festive and lively way to use a brush stroke. That's really, to me, what's at the spirit of toll painting. And you might see toll painting on your holiday crafts or, my grandfather always sold his carpentry at a yearly bazaar at Christmas time, and there were all kinds of toll painted gifts that would be sold there. And basically the reason I'm bringing this up is because you could spend a long time belaboring yourself over trying to hit every detail. But once you learn that the design is in the brush stroke, then you're going to have a lot easier time achieving this process. So all you want to do is adjust the pressure of your brush stroke with each mark. It just is a rule of thumb to keep in mind when you're doing this kind of work, because really this is a decorative painting process. It has that folk art feeling combined with, you know, these new wave products. I would call them new wave just because they're not your typical traditional oil painting or something of that nature. So anyway, increase pressure where there's a larger area. I want to make sure you can see this. I don't want my hair to be in the way. And decrease pressure where there's smaller areas. And that's the easy way to do decorative painting. That way I don't spend all my time trying to figure out how to use this brush to fill in these small areas. Now this is just a guide for the pattern. You could do a large damask. I think that would really be beautiful. You could do small ones. You could adjust any of the elements that you have available to you. Or maybe you want to make a drawing, even better. You can, you know, draw and paint directly on these skins without a template at all. So this is just something to keep us learning while we're trying new processes. All right, so let's keep painting until we get at least this one on, and then I'll show you some additional painting techniques here for the skins. Okay. Perfect. Now, when I want to move this without touching the surface until it's dry, I can just keep moving my template around wherever I want that to go. All right, so to help save on time, I'm going to demonstrate these other elements and techniques that we can use, but not necessarily take you through the whole thing because we've got a finished one here that we can continue to demonstrate the process. So now I have these a different texture element that I can bring in and a different color that I can bring them in with. So I'm adjusting the color and giving this more image, color, and texture identity. Okay, so we're not going to necessarily paint all these right now, but I just wanted to demonstrate how you can move these elements around in any way that you choose. So maybe you print that out, and then you come back, you cut them out, and you do that collage technique, okay? So let's just focus on one good one for now. Oh, stuff is sticking to the table. And while I'm getting adjusted here, I want to remind everyone that we are doing a giveaway this evening. So don't forget to comment in the chat. What's your favorite painting medium? Acrylic, oils, gouache. I like to dabble in gouache myself. And then don't forget to like this post, like our Facebook page, and follow us. And then go check out that bundle page. You don't need a gift card to check out that bundle page, although it would be great. So don't forget to enter. But go check out the products that we're using here today. And it's going to, I think, be very interesting when you see all of the various types of golden paint and mediums that we're using that are intermixable. So that's what's so great about the golden line, is that you get all of your needs met with one line. All right, so I've just mixed the high flow colors here. I've mixed the quinacridone magenta with a little bit of the titanium white. And I'm using the high flow because this is a detail area. I could have used the high flow here, but I don't know that I necessarily needed it. But look how razor thin these lines are. So this process is just made to get you those thinner lines. And you'll see how it spreads out. And I like a little bit more punchiness to this pink. You can adjust these colors, you can mix them. They don't have to be, you know, pink and teal and purple, etc. But these colors do work well together. So that's something to keep in mind when you're combining colors and textures like we are. And I'm just doing an outline, I'm not filling it in. And the reason is, the reason that I'm not filling it in is because I like to have that change in texture. So you have positive and negative spaces in your painting. So incorporating positive and negative spaces can help your overall composition. So it is interesting, which is why we've chosen, you know, some of these elements specifically, is because we can play around with the positive and negative, and you know, the color variety and the paint texture variety. Okay, so, and you can see how this detail brush and high flow paint are just working together in perfect harmony to give you that razor thin line. Now when we go to paint our last skin and we do that reverse painting technique, you might want to bring that into your other elements. These are just ideas for you. So the high flow, because it goes on in a pretty thin layer, is going to dry a little bit faster than your heavy body or your fluid acrylics. So it's just something to keep in mind because you do want to mind the drying times with this process. That's how you get that final thick, waxy, built-in look. It's because we're making these individual layers that stand alone that are also going to work great together. And this is fairly quick, or it can be. Okay, almost done. Now, there's one last technique that I want to show you. So, just like this other skin that we were looking at before, we can continue to fill in these patterns and shapes, but there's one last technique that I want to show you that doesn't involve a template at all, which is just this easy splatter technique. So let's do that. Now, splatter does get a little messy, so I'm going to grab a piece of palette paper here. This is my 12 by 16 palette paper. It's very, very handy. I use it for a lot of different processes, so I would recommend it. So let's put this down so we don't mess up our nice wood grain, because this high flow is pretty powerful stuff. All right, now I have this beautiful indigo anthraquinone blue. It's available in the small bottles of high flow. And we squeezed some of that out onto our palette before. So now, and you can do this all on the front side. You can do front and back. You can do any order that you want. Just remember, each layer you paint needs to dry before the next one. to be on the safe side. Now, I've just got this loaded up in my brush, and I'm just gonna tap it, tap. Glad I put that palette paper down. All right, and you can do as much or as little of this as you want. How fun is that? So easy, right? Now, if you want to take it a step further and you like that pooling, I like to kind of lift these up and just let that drip a little bit because it gives it that drippy, juicy, painty feeling. Okay, and I even like it just like this, okay? So now let's start to imagine as you're working, you know, what this is going to look like when we layer. And it's a completely magical kind of layering because you get so much out of it. So, all right, so that's skin number 1. But we want 2 skins, okay? And we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that right after we adhere this first skin down because I wanna show you what happens when we place one on top of the other. So this one's drying, I'm gonna set it to the side. And then we had this other one that we've been looking at. I think we're okay with this. Everything goes, all right. Now, let's take our background that's already dry, just like our other one though, right? Same color palette. And you can see, hopefully you can still see okay. Okay. Now, let's take this skin that's already done. All right, so piece of plastic, totally dry, totally durable. We're going to layer this on top of our board. And of course, we're going to use a golden medium as our adhesive to do that. So what we have is the Soft Gel Gloss by Golden. So we really want to be able to see through the layers as we build them up. It's easy to get cloudy, muddy, messy layers when we're doing these kinds of processes. But the good news is Golden has come up with both the matte and gloss option in their painting mediums. So we want to use that gloss because when it dries, it's going to be completely clear without that hazy matte finish. All right, so just a tip for you. Now, I'm going to go back to my large brush because remember, one large and one small brush is incredibly handy during this process. But make sure that this brush is clean because when we go to paint that gloss gel on, we want it to be completely clear. And maybe you have a couple brushes because you were making interesting textures with them. But a large one is handy. So let's open up our soft gel gloss, which gave me a surprise. So this is live, so we won't stop for anything, including that. Everyone gets one. Okay, so now let's get this boop back in there. Get this. What you should have is this super luscious, creamy, soft gel gloss, okay? And because this is dry, it's okay to paint it right on, okay? Slap it on. Don't sweat it. But do apply it evenly. Excuse me. Do apply it evenly all over the board. Don't use too much. Only use as much as you'll need. You know, it only takes that one layer of coverage to get adhesion, so there's no sense in globbing it on. Okay, working it in, and I can feel that texture under the brush. I'm glad I got a little bit of that built up. That heavy texture is because of that heavy body paint. Remember that titanium white that we brought in? All right. I think I've got this all covered. Now, I'm not worried about my edges because I like a little bit of a painted edge. Now, some people, it drives them crazy, but this is the Acrylic Gessobord, and being able to see a little bit of that painting process when it's all said and done, I think can be charming. But it's totally up to you. You can tape it off with a little bit of painter's tape, and you'll have perfectly clean edges if you just want to hang it up on the wall just like that. All right, so while this is still workable, let's take that finished skin. I want to make sure I'm putting the right side up and right side down. And I'm setting it on. Try to get it as close as possible the first time you put it down, because it doesn't like to move around once it is down. So once it's been on there for a minute, it's pretty much set and done. All right. Now, that's great. I've got it on there, but let's take the extra measure to make sure that we get any excess medium or air bubbles out. This is just a hard brayer, and I'm going to roll it out from the center of the board out to help get rid of any excess painting medium from what I applied. And I'm not sure if you can see, but it kind of, when there is excess, it kind of pools up at the edge of the board there. And we're going to do our best because there's texture, like I said. You can also put a piece of palette paper down in between your rolling layer if you are worried about getting paint or medium on your brayer. All right. And this process is, it's not 100% perfect in the sense that you're going to get a lot of textures that maybe you didn't expect. But that really is the point, is to get these interesting textures through, the skins and building up around the edges, because that is one of the things that we love about encaustics, are the layers and the textures and the interesting things that happen that seem unpredictable when you're using hot wax. But here all we need is a bucket of water and our acrylic paints. So no heat, no fumes, nothing like that. Okay, so we've got this one layer down, and this is another point in time that you want to let it dry. Because that next layer that we put on and the next all need to dry so that we don't have a big wet painting in the middle. Okay, so the more you let them get bone dry between each layer, the better result you're going to have. So while that's drying, I'm going to set this up here carefully. Okay, let's finish up our skins painting process. Now, remember when we first started, we talked about this reverse painting process that we're going to be doing. I'm going to show you how to do that. And I think you're really going to enjoy the results because it gives you an extra dimension that you may not get with your typical process. Well, it gives you an easier way to get the dimension that you may not get otherwise. Now, I could do the same thing here. I could use all of my floral elements, a combination of them. For demonstration purposes, we'll just do maybe one flower. See what we have time for. I'm going to go back to my detail brush. And we're going to use a combination of that detail painting process, and then we'll go back to using our fluid acrylics, etc. So on one side, we're going to just outline our drawing. Maybe you have a drawing of a flower that you want to use. What a perfect way to integrate a drawing that you love that's already designed and be able to reproduce it over and over. So it's just a great way to kickstart your painting at the end of the day. And this is just quick. Let's make it quick. And I'm just getting the basic details. And I'm gonna hope that this dries for us so that I can show you part 2. But this should dry pretty quickly because it is the high flow. Remember, it's that thin layer. So one other element, before I keep going, if you're still with us or if you just joined us, we are doing a $100 e-gift card giveaway this evening. And the way to be eligible to win that drawing is to like this post, to like our Facebook page, and follow us. And then don't forget to respond to our giveaway question, which is, what's your favorite painting medium? I'm using, in essence, one painting medium, but 100 different ways to spin it, right? So what's your favorite? Watercolor, acrylic, encaustics, true encaustics. Let us know and you'll be eligible to win that gift card. All right. Now this is that beautiful indigo or navy blue that we were talking about. It's the anthraquinone. Don't forget to check out our bundle page because you'll find printable templates there and you'll be able to jumpstart your artwork. And you'll also be able to find all the products that we're using because there are so many products by Golden to explore, and we wanted to make sure that we got a good number of them in this project. All right, so when you do that, this is what you'll have on your top layer surface. It already looks nice because it's floral and it's just a delicate outline. Maybe you want to leave it that way, but we're not going to stop there. But I am going to set this to the side because, of course, we have another layer that we want to finish our painting off with. So while this dries, I'm going to walk you through how to make a pourable acrylic encaustic effects formula. And this is really the star of the show. So all the other elements that we're working on and we're building up, those are all techniques that we're incorporating. But really, to get that sheen and that waxy look and feel and that final encaustic effects layer, we have a special formula for you, and I don't want you to miss it. So here it is. We're going to combine Golden Clear Tar Gel with fluid matte medium, and these are pourable mediums, so they're going to flow right on our surface. And we're going to combine those in a special amount that I'll tell you here in a minute with the Golden Fluid Interference Blue Fine. The interference color are, they give you a colored sheen to your artwork, but when they're layered on top of darker colors, you get even more of that metallic shininess. So it's not an all-out metallic, it's just shiny interference. So when you turn your painting in the light, you get some of that colored sheen. And then we have the quinacridone azo gold, and we just need a pin drop of this quinacridone azo gold. That's what's going to give us that waxy look, that yellowy honey color. Okay, so let's get this mixed up while that other skin is drying. Now, I'm a big fan of more blue shine and clear shine than I am that matte, fluid matte shine. So for my acrylic encaustic effects formula, I like to use mostly clear tar gel. So this is just a little flip top container. You can keep your formula when, because you don't need a ton of it, but you can keep it from drying out if you want to use it for another painting. So here's that tar gel, but we want enough, okay? So maybe about 1 to 2 fluid ounces of clear tar gel to about a ½ ounce or an ounce of fluid matte medium, depending on how matte you want your finish to be. So half as much. Of course, if you want more matte, switch those ratios. You can do 1 to 2 ounces of fluid matte gel to the 1 ounce of clear tar gel. It's completely up to you. Now let's get this interference blue. Let me get one that's, I think I've got one that's already open. I'm gonna take it from the display here. It's already open. Whoop, and it's ready to use. Okay, you can use, you know, 2, 3, 4 drops of interference blue because it's mostly transparent. So you're not going to see it like a color, okay? Did my mic fall off? Yep. All right. Now, remember, just a smidge. In fact, I'm almost hesitant, just a smidge. I'm gonna take a clean palette knife and literally just a pin drop because this color is really potent, okay? Now, let's incorporate everything together right here in this little mixing jar. And I'm just using a palette knife. Now you can see here, probably on the overhead camera, that you really need to incorporate the different mediums. They are really different textures, and you want to take the time to really mix these, because if you don't, when you go to pour, you'll get something called crazing, which is cracking and separation of painting medium from moisture, basically. But the reason that it would happen here is because, you know, your fluid medium is separating from your tar gel and so on and so forth. So just mix it up. Mix it up really, really, really well. And see how we get this honey color that is just enough, not clear, but still transparent to give us what we want. All right, so that's the special Acrylic Encaustic Effects pouring formula that you got here only at Blick. Okay, so I'm just gonna set this to the side for now. I'm gonna put it right here. And I'm gonna test this, oh, not quite ready on the skin. So let's see here. Actually, I think what I'll do, all right, back to my handy palette paper so I can show you this technique. So I know we're getting close to time probably. I want to make sure I get that formula on there for you guys. Okay. All right, so this is the side that I painted on, and I think we're safe at least just to demonstrate this, but make sure it's totally dry when you're working. All right, flip it over. Okay, so now we're working on the back, right? And at this point, this is where we can do some interesting reverse painting. And reverse painting is just saying that we're painting on the back side of our surface and it's going to show through to the front. Kind of like painting on a window. Okay, if you've ever done that, you want to put your highlights on first and then your darker colors on last. Okay, that's the rule of thumb, the only rule of thumb that I'm going to give you for this process. So you're going to want to have a combination of the colors that you want. For me, that's going to be a little bit of, and I am using a combination of high flow and fluid acrylics. For me, I'm going to be using white, titanium white, ultramarine violet, and mostly sticking with those. All right, so I'm going to take my white first. Now usually, and I just imagine in my mind, you know, what a purple orchid would look like. And I just take it from there. So I like these, you know, highlights like this to give it that kind of ribbed or striped look. And you don't need too much of it. just a touch, because if it's too much white, it's going to dominate. Because remember, when we flip this over, you're going to see that layer first, okay? So now I can go to my other colors. I've got, let's see what I've got here. That's blue. We could use blue, but I really want that purple. Okay, taking my purple, and I'm just going to mix it. I want to make sure you can see my palette of colors here, because we're doing a lot of mixing, and that's what's great about these colors, is that they mix perfectly. All right, so I've got a little bit of this purple, and I'm going to bring in a little bit of white. So I'm kind of starting a gradient, okay? And we're going to quickly get this laid down, and we're going to move on to that final pour, and then you'll be on your way to making your own encaustic paintings. Now, just painting within the outline, I guess that's the only other rule of thumb, is that you do want to stay in this outline, and then I'm bringing in some darker colors. Now, I don't have to worry about, necessarily what this is going to look like on the other side, because I'll show you. You really just need to follow the grain of the flower pattern that you have. Don't go painting side to side if you need to, follow the curve of the petal. And then bring in your darker colors as you see fit. Okay, I don't want to belabor this too much. So, and once that white is dry, you can paint right over it, but you can also paint right over all these colors. So when you think you're done and you flip this over to check it, then that's when you can go back. You can paint more layers into it to cover any spaces you may have missed or anything like that. See how easy this is without thinking about every little brush stroke. The outline does a lot of the work for you, okay? So I'm just going to wrap this up, show you what it's going to look like when it's all done. Okay. Now this one, we're going to want to dry, but so far we're getting there, right? So let's not spend too much time on that so that we can get all done, okay? So once that's dry, you've got these flowers. One last touch, okay, before not that one, just to help make it look a little more realistic. You can paint back on top of these skins again, right? So we can just add a little touch of yellow, just a little bit to give us that little something extra, okay? So this one, we're going to do the same process, although I'm going to speed us up. I'm going to speed us ahead so that we can get this all in. So layer this on top of your other skin. Adhere it with the soft gel gloss. Run it over with a brayer. Make sure you get those air bubbles out and that excess medium, all right? When you've done that, what you will have is this, okay? All of your layers are adhered. Now look, let's do this because we can. All right, I think that we're ready. Let's see, now I rushed through my little, okay. All right, now make sure it's not too wet. I want to go overboard with that. All right, let's put on the Acrylic Encaustic Effects formula. Here's what you'll need. probably a board or something to pour on, because this is paint pouring. And when you pour, you may get that runoff, okay? So you're going to want to put that painting on a board, and then you're going to want to have your Acrylic Encaustic Effects formula. I want to make sure that you can see it there. And just to be safe, I don't want that color to run, so I'm just going to help dry it out. I can always paint on the top of the board. Okay, so this is all mixed well. I have a palette knife and my formula, and I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to pour it right on top, making sure that all these layers are dry in between. Oh, look at that. Doesn't that just make you want to eat it all up? All right, I may need more, but I'm going to spread it out. Now, the nice thing about this formula, it spreads like a cake icing, or like sweetened condensed milk is what I'm thinking of. But you can spread it with a knife, but it's still self-leveling, right? Because we put that clear tar gel in, okay? So I'm just spreading, and I think I want a little bit more. Let's put that here. All right. And then just spread it over your whole surface, nice and even. I wanted to make sure that my paint wasn't wet there. But as long as you're following that rule of thumb that each layer is bone dry before you put on the next one, then you'll be in great shape. And we're going to be announcing the winner shortly in our comments section. So one last reminder, if you haven't had a chance to go and check out our bundle page where you can see all the products that we're using here, please go check it out and get yourself some freebies, some bonus printable templates that are going to help you to right away make this painting of your choice with what we have there, and all the golden products that we combined here this evening to get this amazing encaustic effects formula. Now, once you've got it all spread out, this formula is going to self-level and fill in any texture gaps or bumps or air bubbles that may have happened along the way. And it's going to look like this, and it's going to look foggy until about 24 hours when it's totally clear and dried through. And the end result is going to be just like these paintings that you see here. Remember, you can adjust and tweak that formula as much as you want to make it more matte or more sheen. That is totally up to you. And well, I hope that you enjoyed this demonstration. Please look for the winner in the chat, and I'm so glad you joined us. And don't forget to tune back in on Thursday for our next Facebook Live, and we will see you there.